It's probably about time, isn't it? Let's be honest, it's probably about time I spoke about the Formula 1 2018 season. I've been doing it for a whole year, but what really went down? What highs and lows did we have across the season? So, as we start off 2019, it's the 2nd of January today. It's about time we do my season review, my end of year report for the Formula 1 2018 season. Now, I'm sure you guys are completely bored to death of season reviews, and I am as well, to be totally honest with you. I really am. I've heard them all over the shop, so I wanted to try and do something a little bit different with my season review. As you can see, it is by far the longest video on my channel. It's, well, did I say that? It's about the size of some of the podcasts we do, but I thought rather than splitting it up into separate videos, I'd rather talk about it all in this particular video. In the description as well, I'll tell you now, right at the start, there is timestamps, so if you do want to jump forward to a particular team, because we'll be going through team by team, if you fancy just going into the description, or I'll do it as a pinned comment as well, you'll be able to jump straight forward to those. And at the end of the video, something I'm not going to lie, I've had a lot of fun sorting out and messing around with a little bit. I've got some awards for some of my favourite things that have happened this season, including Best Livery, Best Helmet Design, and probably my favourite award I'm going to be giving away, the Best Crash for the Formula 1 2018 season. But you guys are here to hear my thoughts across the entirety of the Formula 1 season, so let's kick it off then with, well, the team that had a really difficult season finished last in the championship, Williams. Looking back to 2017, the team had a partnership of Lance Stroll and Felipe Massa, finished 5th overall in the championship, but as you can see on screen here, 10th overall out of 10 teams, with the driver lineup of Lance Stroll and Sergei Sorokin, one that was hugely criticised going into the season because of that, well, intense lack of experience. You had Lance Stroll, who had a very difficult rookie year in 2017, and Sergei Sorokin, being a rookie himself, who many saw as a driver that, let's be honest, didn't really show incredible talent in the lower formulas to deserve a chance in Formula 1, but nevertheless, he beat out drivers such as Robert Kubica, even the likes of George Russell, who maybe could have had a chance in a Formula 1 seat, but the team, with his Russian backing, decided to go with Sergei Sorokin, and let's be honest, with the signing of Paddy Lowe over the winter, it looked like, alright, Williams, they've had a couple of difficult years, maybe they can get back on track. They still have the Mercedes engine, it's not all lost. But very early on into the season, even in winter testing, it was clear, well, Williams was definitely not going to be a car near the podium. And to be honest, and what ended up happening was a car that didn't ever look like it was going to be in the points. And at the beginning of the season, it looked like there was no hope whatsoever of them getting in the points. In the first race in Australia, Lance Stroll was able to get in Q2 in qualifying. But apart from that, Sergei Sorokin, in the very first race of the season, again in Australia, retired from one of the craziest retirements ever in Formula 1, you could argue, with I think it was a sandwich bag getting stuck in the radiator of the car. A very peculiar one. At the beginning of the season, well, the first half of the season, Lance Stroll was able to pick up points on one occasion, Sergei Sorokin not at all, and even Stroll's 1 point that he was able, 1 points finish, which was an 8th place, so indeed 4 points he was able to get, that was in Azerbaijan, which in itself was a crazy race, and Sorokin maybe could have had a chance of getting points, but retired on the opening lap after contact with Alonso, so even when there was chances, they weren't able to take them. And we saw this across the entirety of 2018. There was only one weekend where they actually seemed to have a fair bit of pace. And it was the one weekend where Sergei Sorokin got his only point of the season. And it was the only weekend where Williams were able to get a double points finish. Lance Stroll only got in the points twice over the season. And it was in Monza. And Stroll in 9th, Sorokin in 10th. The only reason Sorokin got 10th, I will say, is because Roman Grosjean was disqualified in the Haas for an illegal flaw. A very strange weekend it was, but apart from that weekend in Monza, an awful year for Williams, which is a real shame. One of the highlights, apart from Monza, was Robert Kubica. Having him as that third driver and test driver behind the scenes seemed to help them a lot with developing the car, not necessarily for this season, but for next season, and that has earned him a drive for 2019. I want to avoid talking about 2019 too much in this season review. Obviously, we're looking back, and I know in a few weeks' time, well, not even a few weeks' time, in probably next week, I would say, I'm going to be doing my predictions there. But I think Williams, well, after this year, they can only go forward. They've got Russell coming into the team, which again, I think that's a big bonus for them. They've got Kubica with his experience. Even with the team this season, I think that's going to help tenfold. I really do. What I will say is that Lance Stroll and Sergei Sorokin, despite finishing 18th and 19th, Stroll only picking up 6 points across the season, Sorokin only the 1, they didn't do too bad. They really didn't do too bad. It was the first ever season in Formula 1 where every single driver kept their seat, and it was the same lineup in Australia as it was in Abu Dhabi, so that was brilliant. But also it was the first ever season in Formula 1 where everyone picked up points. And if we look at winter testing, I don't think anyone expected Williams to score points. So the fact they were able to get a double point finish, the fact that Stroll was able to get it up twice, and to get in Q2 every now and then, not at any point this season did Williams get into Q3. So that is something that, well, they can improve upon. But Stroll this year was brilliant on the opening lap. I think he's the driver that managed to gain the most places on the opening lap of anyone across the 2018 season. And Sergei Sorokin, despite, like we say, having the worst car on the grid by quite a margin as well. You know, it's not like they were just behind Sauber, just behind Toro Rosso. No. These guys were miles off anyone else. These guys were the rear gunners for most of the season. Maybe at the very end, you could say McLaren were down at the back with them. I think that's a fair statement, but one that I imagine Williams will want to forget very, very quickly, because up till now, their pace in the hybrid era has been very, very good. And it was such a shame to see them so far back. The team should not be at the bottom of the grid. And like I say, I don't want to look forward too much in this sort of review, but next season, I'm pretty confident we will see better things from Williams. Let's move on then to the 9th place team, which I find very strange that they ended up in 9th place, and that's Toro Rosso. And, well, I suppose over the winter, we knew that they were going to have Honda engines this year, brand new for the team, and after Honda's, I suppose, lack of pace in the McLaren, it sort of looked like, well, this is going to go terribly at Toro Rosso. If McLaren can't do it, why will Toro Rosso be able to do it? And they finished 9th in the Constructors, which, let's be honest, it's not great, and it's probably what a lot of people expected them to be that far down, but they finished 7th in 2017, so they have gone backwards. But I think for a first year with Honda, with the reliability that they've had, it's actually very impressive. And with 2 rookies in their car, okay, Hartley and Gasly had a few races at the end of 2017, but this was their first full seasons in Formula 1, so generally in racing terms, people will call them a rookie. It's their first rookie season. I think Gasly picked up 6 or 5 retirements across the whole season. 1 in Australia, 1 in Spain. I think he got 1 in France on the opening lap. Russia, and then at the end, in the last race of the season, he picked up a failure with the engine, I imagine, with a lot of fire coming out the back of that car. So plenty of retirements for both drivers across the season. You would have seen on the screen a couple of seconds ago that Gasly was able to get 15th in the championship. Brendan Hartley, 19th. Now, the story of Toro Rosso's season is definitely a tale of two halves. And I think this is the same with quite a lot of teams up and down the grid. But I think Toro Rosso in particular, they started off the year very strongly. Gasly was able to get 4 points finishes in the first half of the season. But in the second half, was only able to pick up the 1. And that was a 10th place in Mexico. And that was only due to retirements up ahead of him. I mean, think back to the very early stages of the season. Yes, he retired in Australia, but in that second race in Bahrain, for some reason, that Toro Rosso's pace was on fire. 4th place for Gasly. That was mega. It's just a shame that the end of the season in Abu Dhabi, that we just said, was the complete opposite, and he ended up literally on fire. So, look, Gasly this year, what did we expect, really? I mean, a lot of people spoke about when he first got that seat at Toro Rosso, saying, yeah, he's all right, he's never going to end up at Red Bull. Ricciardo and Verstappen, they're nailed in. They're not moving on. I said I wasn't going to talk about 2019, but here I am again. He is going there next year. And alright, he got a 4th in Bahrain, he managed to get a 6th in Hungary, he managed to get a 7th in Monaco. That was a really strong result actually for Toro Rosso that particular weekend. But was there anything stellar apart from those? You know, was he really the superstar driver that Max Verstappen was in the Toro Rosso? And I think it's very difficult to compare. If I'm being totally honest, I really do. I mean, you look at the gap between Gasly and Hartley, now that is definitely bigger than it was between Verstappen and Sainz, for example. But I think Gasly, with the tools he had, he definitely outperformed the car. I think that's fair to say. You know, you look at Brendan, he managed to get in the points 3 times. His best result of the season was 9th. I mean, it's definitely contrasting fortunes. It really was. Now, I'll talk about Brendan for a minute because, unfortunately, for one of the nicest guys on the grid, a multiple WEC world champion, I think a lot of us knew going into this season it was going to be a difficult year for him. I think a lot of us really did and were aware that this year it was going to be almost, well, it was almost as if they had no one else to go to. You know, Dan Ticktum, he wasn't ready. You had Alex Albon in Formula 2 that they'd cut ties with. Danny Kvyat, they'd cut ties with him as well, ironically. But anyway, it just felt for the whole season. I mean, by the time we got to Canada, 7 rounds in, there was talk that Lando Norris was going to be taking his place for the rest of the season. I mean, I'm still a little bit shocked that he was able to get a whole season through Formula 1 because he really did struggle for the majority of this year. And all the pressure he had, all of the pressure he had with the media constantly on his back saying he wasn't good enough this year. Yes, he finished 19th, and I think that's, well, when you see that he got 4 points and Gasly was able to get 29, I think that's alarm bells ringing for sure. And when Gasly got 4th, he got 17th. Yeah, there's no surprise he's not going to be in Formula 1 next year, but for the majority of the season, you know, that first half where Gasly was picking up points, well, not more often than not. He got 3 retirements in that first half, 5 non-points finishes, and then was able to get 4 points finishes. So it's a mixture of everything, really. But on those days where the car was performing, Gasly was able to extract the best from the car. And you know what? Like I say, 9th overall in the Constructors still feels a little bit odd. And considering they were 15 points behind the guys in front, Sauber, which we'll talk about in a second, that's a little bit alarming. And that's only really because, like I said earlier about McLaren and Alfa Romeo, McLaren, Toro Rosso, those sort of teams slowed down, but Alfa Romeo, Sauber, well, they were another team with contrasting seasons. And whereas Toro Rosso started the season so well, Sauber, well, they were the opposite. They had rookie Charles Leclerc and almost Formula 1 veteran now, Marcus Ericsson in their car. And last year, they were the backmarker team. But this year, finishing 8th with Sauber for the very first time, coming on board with Alfa Romeo, did we really expect them to be 8th? Did anyone expect them to be 8th? I mean, you look back to last year, where they got 5 points across the whole season. The whole season, and that was only Pascal Wehrlein picking up points twice. This year, Charles Leclerc managed to get points on 10 occasions across the season. That was mega. They managed to get their first point in the second race in Bahrain, courtesy of Marcus Ericsson. It really was a complete shift. And like I say, going into the season, there was this real sense of optimism that Charles Leclerc, he looked something special. He really did look something special. And for some of us that watched Formula 2 in 2017, he looked mega. He really did. But would his pace translate over to Formula 1 straight away? And I think it's safe to say no, I don't think he did. You know, the first 3 races had a couple of spins, a couple of incidents that, well, were his own doing. Didn't get involved with other cars and tangles like that, but just silly little mistakes, not managing to get a lap in qualifying really nailed down, really hindered him early on. It really did. But it was only once he managed to get that mega 6th place in Azerbaijan that really pushed him on. He was then able to get a Q3 out of the Sauber in France. That was a mega result as well. And ended off the last 3 races of the season as best of the rest in 7th in Mexico, Brazil and Abu Dhabi, and was also able to do that in Russia, and the 2 races in between in Japan and the USA retired. So that tells you there that not only did Charles Leclerc get better, but also Marcus Ericsson. Marcus Ericsson, he got those first points early on with that 9th place in Bahrain, but then had a bit of a drought, was able to get a 10th place in Austria, then a 9th in Germany, but near the end of the season he was able to pick up 3 more points finishes, and ended up he finished 17th overall, which is okay. And for Marcus, again, we know he won't be in Formula 1 next year, but after a few mega shunts from the Sauber boys this year, we had Ericsson in practice in Monza. That was probably, I don't want to say the biggest crash, but the biggest solo crash from a car we've seen for a very long time. One of the biggest impacts. Charles Leclerc, we saw that major impact with, whereas Halo, that was a big talking point in Belgium, where Fernando Alonso flew over the top of his car, and I think there would have been serious injuries and implications if the Halo wasn't in Formula 1. And I said at the time at the beginning of the season, I was a fan of I don't want to say a fan of the Halo, but I was pro Halo. I was, and it wasn't the most aesthetically pleasing, but I didn't think it looked as ugly as a lot of people were saying. As I said with the Formula 1 logo, which this is his first year of the Formula 1 logo, and I think a lot of people have got used to that. And I think the Halo as well, I think, yeah, there's still room for improvement. I really do believe that, and I think a lot of people would agree with that, but it's fine. You know, you look at that picture on screen there, I mean, I think it blends it. Look, it was last minute. It serves its purpose. I think it was fine, and I don't think it affected the racing whatsoever, and I think a lot of people would agree with that. So it's still divisive, but I think after that crash in Belgium, not so much. And a lot of people really did, I suppose, calm down a little bit about the whole Halo situation. But Charles Leclerc finishing 13th, Ericsson 17th, but Leclerc managed to pick up 39 points in the Sauber. That's only 10 less than Esteban Ocon, 11 less than Fernando Alonso. I mean, say in Azerbaijan, you know, if another guy in front of him would have DNF'd, that's even less. You know, and we always say the gaps in Formula 1, they're minor anyway, but this guy, what a year he's had. And next year when he makes a step up to Ferrari, well, I don't think anyone should underestimate this guy. I really don't. Because Marcus Ericsson, like I say, he's been in Formula 1 now for 4 seasons? 5 seasons? He's been there quite a while. So this guy knows his way around the Formula 1 circuit. But Alfa Romeo Sauber, big strides this year. Next year, I think they're the team with the biggest question mark. Will they make that step up again, or will they go backwards? It's going to be a lot of questions around Sauber for next year. But this year, they performed, I think, better than a lot of us would have expected. But they were a team, actually, before we move on to Force India. They were a team that I did predict right, so that was something. But Force India, a very difficult year for them. Yes, 7th in the Constructors. Yes, 8th for Perez and 12th for Ocon. Is that a good year? Well, probably going into 2018, after the winter testing they'd had, yeah, they probably would have taken that. You know, they didn't pick up points for the first 2 races, and you're starting to think, oh dear, what's going on here with Force India? I mean, Perez in the first 3 races didn't pick up any points whatsoever. Ocon actually was able to get a 10th in Bahrain, but China was outside the point. So in the first 3 rounds, they'd only got 1 point. And like I say, Force India weren't even getting Q3. And this very much looked like the year that their best of the rest title was going to go away. And it did. You know, 7th overall, I think they'll be disappointed with. But deep down, there's a lot of stories that went on with Force India this year. Perez, after Hulkenberg, was the best of the rest, so that's something to be proud of. Apart from the top 3 teams, Force India, or Racing Point, but at the time, Force India, were the only other team that was able to pick up a podium, and that was Sergio Perez in Baku. And up to that point, they'd only got 1 point as a team overall. Esteban Ocon, he, scored more times than Sergio Perez. Very close in terms of, okay, yes, Ocon didn't get as many points as his teammate at the end of the season, but that podium, and I don't want to call it a fluke podium, because nothing in Formula 1's a fluke. You've got to be in the right place at the right time, but if you understand, no one expected Sergio Perez to get that podium that weekend. Well, like I say, they hadn't even scored any points, so I think it's fair to say it was a bit of a fluke podium. I know the Force India was a particularly strong car around that circuit, but it was still at the time very strange to see them so far up, and with DNFs here, there and everywhere, it was a bit of a carnage race. But if you take that away, it was very close between Ocon and Perez this year. Qualifying as well, very close between the two of them. So issues weren't from the drivers. It wasn't necessarily from the car. At the end of the season, I think it was fair to say that Force India were best of the rest. The issues came with the administration and issues behind closed doors where, the team went into administration. So around the Belgian Grand Prix during the summer, Sergio Perez himself put the team into administration, and I won't go through it all right now, but the end result, and if you want to know more, there is stuff on the channel you can go and check out from a little bit earlier on. I will put it in the links. But the end result was Force India won no more. And Lawrence Stroll, father of Lance Stroll, the most popular video on my channel for some reason. I really don't get that, but that's neither here nor there. He bought out the team. Saved them, saved all the jobs within the team, including the drivers, and he has had to, not only rename the team, but completely start afresh for the rest of the season in terms of points, which was a very strange thing that they had to do. Licensing and who owned the team, who owned the car. It was all a big mess. And again, you can check that out on an earlier video on the channel. But it was all a big mess. And, okay, they had to start afresh. Straight away, that first weekend, Esteban Ocon third on the grid, Sergio Perez fourth on the grid. A mega weekend at Spa. Ended up getting 5th and 6th overall, but after that, there was only 2 weekends where the team picked up no points whatsoever. And that was only because they had retirements in those races. And that was in Mexico and Singapore. So, Perez, that particular race, had an awful race. I probably would put that as the worst race. Well, actually, that's probably a bit crazy, but, no. I think that's the worst race of anyone this season. I'm going to go out and say it. He had a terrible race in Singapore, and probably one he'll definitely want to forget. But 52 points they picked up overall, known as Racing Point. 59 they picked up in the first half of the season, but that was massively helped out by that podium. If you put those 2 point scores together, they would have ended up 5th. So Force India, a difficult year. I think there's no complaints going towards Ocon or Perez whatsoever. I think they both proved that they deserve to be in Formula 1. I don't want to talk about 2019. Ocon does deserve a seat. I think we're all aware of that. He has proved himself to be a driver of a good enough standard. I do agree with some people that I don't think he's proved to us yet that he's World Championship material. But Force India, will they be happy, won't they? I think they're just happy to still be on the grid. McLaren, okay. This is a more interesting one. McLaren. How on earth they ended up 6th overall, I will never ever know. How Alonso ended up 11th. How Van Dorn even got 16th. I don't really have a clue. After the first race of the season, if you'd have told me that, I probably would have been a little bit more concerned. You look at the first 5 races of the year. Alonso scored in every single race. He was able to get 5th in the first race of the season. Van Dorn got points in Australia, points in Bahrain, points in Azerbaijan, retired in Spain, but it was on for points. And it was looking so rosy. We went to Monaco, Alonso retired, Van Dorn got a 14th, and okay, they're allowed a dodgy race. No points again in Canada. You're thinking, oh, okay. No points again in France, and you're thinking, whoa, where's this pace gone? What's happened here? Alonso was able to get points then in Austria, in Silverstone, later on in Hungary, they were on for a double points. Then we had the summer break, and that very early form from McLaren, that looked so promising, that tempted Fernando Alonso to say, now we can fight. seemed to vanish by the time we got to that summer break. And a lot of people were questioning, well, what happened? What happened with the car? They put on this funny nose that you can see on screen there that was supposed to be absolutely game-changing. They had the Renault engines put in this year, gone with the Honda, no more Honda. They wanted to shut that out of their minds, and I don't blame them. I still think they made the right choice. And although Honda and Renault looked very close this year, it was uncovered that McLaren were the worst Renault team on the grid. You know, and for many years they've been parading, marching around saying, look at our engine, it's terrible, but our car, don't worry boys and girls, it's the best on the grid. Well, this year, McLaren have been found out. Their car, their chassis wasn't the best on the grid whatsoever. And Van Dorn, well, in particular, really struggled with the car this year, and has ended up being axed from the team, a move I still think is crazy, and they definitely should have given him at least one more season, but that's neither here nor there. Fernando Alonso, on the other hand, had a brilliant season, but he's decided to call it quits. And the issues at McLaren that, okay, at one point you could place them all on the engine, with both drivers leaving, with the car being pretty doggy come the end of the season, after the summer break, they were able to pick up points twice. And that isn't double point finishes. No. That's just point finishes. That's just points finishes. And that's, crazily enough, that's an 8th place from Van Dorn in Mexico. That wasn't able to keep him on. And then Fernando Alonso was able to get a 7th place in Singapore. But that is crazy. And that's a crazy turnaround from that beginning half of the season in the very first race, where they were able to get 5th and 9th. I mean, what happened? No one really knows what happened with McLaren this year, and I'm hoping that they started development early on next year's car. I think that's a brave thing to say. I really do think that's a brave thing to say. Optimistic as well. I think that's a very optimistic thing to say, but they just vanished. And whereas at the beginning of the year it was a disappointment if they didn't make Q3, at the end of the year it's a miracle if they made Q2 whatsoever. So it was a huge mess from McLaren come the end of the year. And like I say, with Alonso announcing he was going to leave, yes, we got that brilliant livery at the end of the season that you can see on screen now. A little bit of the Belgian flag ended up going in there a little bit to signify Van Dorn's last race as well. But my God, what a mess. Yes, the end scene of Alonso's last race was pretty special. It was really, I mean, you can see it again. Those donuts they were able to do, that was amazing. And it really was pretty warming to see the send-off that Fernando got. And yes, they've left it open, saying he can come back, but I don't think he will. And I think it's a real shame that, I don't want to say McLaren gave up, but this year, how they got 6th in the Constructors is an absolute miracle. And it was Fernando Alonso dragging that car by the neck, by the scruff of the neck. How he finished 11th in the championship, I will never know. He only finished 19 points off best of the rest. I mean, he is truly a legend in Formula 1. He did deserve better. But McLaren will be content. And I think next year, I say this about a lot of teams, but I think they can only improve. Now, this is probably the biggest surprise of the year. Hopefully, the fans that were sort of going crazy on my laptop have now calmed down a little bit. But Haas F1, 5th in the Constructors, Magnussen 9th, that should say, and Grosjean 14th. I mean, that's a bit of a surprise. You know, coming into this year, in my predictions, I put them 9th. In the standings, I thought they were going to really struggle against the likes of, even I suppose, Toro Rosso. I thought they're probably going to be at the back with those guys. There's no way they're going to beat Renault, McLaren, even Williams I thought were going to have better years. But for some reason, they came out with a car that was Ferrari's car from last year, a lot of people were saying. So, is it a surprise that they were that high up? Well, I still think, yes, it was. You know, there's no denying it was very similar to Ferrari's car from last year. But at the end of the day, it's not Ferrari's car from last year. They're allowed certain bits, but they're not allowed to copy Ferrari's car like some people were claiming. And again, there maybe was a little bit of help there, but nowhere near enough to elevate them that high up in the championship. And again, I think they were lucky that the likes of Williams were nowhere, McLaren faded off, but to get fifth in the championship was mega. And we'll start off in Australia, where they could have had a fourth and fifth. The team made mistakes in the pit stop, both of them retired. And those points could have secured them fourth in the constructors. And at the time, a lot of people were saying, well, they look best to the rest, they'll be fine. Well, no. No, it was very up and down most of the season between themselves and Renault. And the only real reason at the end of the day that Haas weren't able to get fourth was that first round of the season, Grosjean's disqualification at Monza because of the flaw, and Magnussen's disqualification in the USA, Haas's first ever points in the USA, that disqualification, also because of something, well, the team's fault for, I think it was fuel. They put in too much fuel, something very strange like that, cost them points, and was the reason, well, one of the reasons they weren't able to get the constructors best of the rest. But it's not the biggest reason. And, this is going to be difficult to talk about. Where do we start? The man on screen now, my boy Roman. You know, a lot of you know that my favourite driver wasn't necessarily at the beginning of the year, but after talking with you guys for a year, joining Sean, and he was my favourite driver in the past. But Romain Grosjean, I loved him in the Lotus days, and when he moved to Haas, wasn't too sure. But I've embraced the meme a little bit this year, and he is my favourite driver once again. But what an awful start to the year. My God, I mean, no points until Austria. Retired in that first race of the season, fair enough. Had an awful race in Bahrain. The team put him on a terrible strategy, but even then wasn't able to pick up points. China ended up 17th. Azerbaijan, well, we know Ericsson hitting him Azerbaijan, so you can't count that one. The biggest moment of the season for him in Spain, where a lot of people were calling for his head, saying that this guy's got to go. They can't have him in Formula One. It was a crazy move, and again, if you want to hear about any of these particular incidents, there will be links all over the shop today to videos that at the time I had a better knowledge of, and it was fresh and raw, so you get that raw reaction. But it was a crazy move, and at the time I was thinking, yeah, he is going to end up getting a ban. He didn't in the end, but it was close. It was close. No points in Monaco, Canada, home Grand Prix, didn't get any points. Fourth place in Austria saved his life. Retired at Silverstone again after a crazy crash, and you're thinking, oh dear, what's he done? Then in Germany got a 6th. Again, I'm thinking, right, he's getting back on track now. Got a 10th, got a 7th. Was able to get in the points in Monza, another 7th, best of the rest, and you're thinking, okay, this is what we expect from Romain Grosjean. This is what we expect. And for the rest of the season, was able to do a lot better. Pretty much destroy Kevin Magnussen in the second half of the season, which saved him. Magnussen, someone that I was so critical of in 2017, had the season of his life. He really did have the season of his life. And finishing 9th overall, he'll probably be disappointed with. But it was that second half of the season. In that beginning half, he was able to get 2 5th places, 2 6th places. But then that second half, his best result was 1 7th place, a couple of 8ths, a 9th and a 10th. Then you're thinking, well, what happened? So, for me this year, Haas F1, a crazy year of contrasting halves for their drivers, but mega improvements. Hats off to them, for sure. Now, the team that did end up best of the rest, somewhat of a surprise to some, was Renault. Now, another team that I expected to do very well this year were Renault, and they were a team that, again, I managed to actually predict correct, which is a little bit crazy to think. So, why am I still a little bit surprised where they finished? And the reason is because I thought they'd be closer to the front, which probably is a little bit crazy to say that, but they were still getting lapped by the likes of Red Bull, which I still think is a little bit alarming. You know, they do have the same engine there. They have had a few years now to progress, and I still understand there should be a big gap, but getting lapped, I think that's probably a little bit disappointing, and I'm sure they'll want to improve for next year. And Daniel Ricciardo, as an addition to the team, is brilliant for them. But I think this year they had a solid lineup. Carlos Sainz picked up the most points finishes of anyone. Nico Hülkenberg did finish best of the rest. So Hülkenberg finished 7th, and Sainz was just able to pip into that top 10. And yes, they weren't where I expected them quite to be. I still think a mega improvement from last year for Renault. It really was. They sorted out that driver lineup. They did bring in Sainz at the end of last year, but Palmer, it's crazy to think Jolyon Palmer was in Formula 1 last season. Well, 2 seasons ago now, but it's still crazy to think that, if you catch my vibe, last year, really, Jolyon Palmer was in Formula 1, so a solid basis, a brilliant looking car this year, one of the best on the grid. But they've been consistent, and I think consistency was key this year with Renault. You see, like I say, Sainz got the most points finishes of anyone, only 2 retirements. Nico Hülkenberg, 7 retirements, so 1 less from the most, which was Daniel Ricciardo. 7 retirements, so by far the most of anyone in that midfield, and yet still finished best of the rest by a comfortable margin of 7 points over Sergio Perez, who himself only had 2 retirements. And he had a podium as well. So I know it's very difficult to compare a lot of these drivers, mainly because they're all in different cars, and there's also a lot of different circumstances going on. But Hülkenberg, for me, another stellar year. And again, we can look at Sainz and can say he was under the radar a lot of this year. That's fair to say. He only got best of the rest, I think, 3 times across the season. In Spain, he was able to get a 7th. In the USA, he was able to get a 7th. And in Abu Dhabi, he was able to get a 6th. So that's a solid job. But a lot of the time this year, he was picking up points. They were 8th places, 9th places, 10th places, in the points, but not quite being the stellar frontman that Hülkenberg was. Going through his results, 7th in Australia, 6th Bahrain, 6th in China, was one of my drivers of the day in a few of those races. He also got 7th in Canada, 6th in Great Britain, 5th in Germany, 2 6ths near the end of the year. It was always there. And despite getting those retirements, if he wasn't retiring, he was in the points. And, okay, there were 3 times this year he wasn't able to pick up points, which was Hungary, Italy, and Russia. But those particular tracks were not great whatsoever for Renault. So I really do believe that the reason they were able to get 4th... Okay, yes, I think Haas had probably the 4th best car over the year. I think that's fair to say. And with Grosjean's crazy mistakes at the beginning of the year, with Haas's inexperience as a team and their mistakes, plus Hülkenberg and Sainz's consistency, I definitely think helped them secure 4th. Because like I said, I don't think Renault had the 4th best car this year. Fair enough if you disagree with me, and at the end of the day, the Constructors' Championship at the end of the season is supposed to indicate who was the 4th best car, but it really shows who was the 4th best team. And I even think, arguably, they weren't the 4th best team because of the fact they've improved so much, the consistency they had, and the fact that a lot of teams, even Haas F1, one weekend they're on the ball, one weekend they're off the ball, but I think Renault, for the majority of races this year, I'm really struggling to think of a race where both Sainz and Hülkenberg were really off the pace. I think maybe Monza would be the one that I'm thinking in my head. Neither of them scored points. Very difficult weekend for them in Monza. So I think I would pick that one out as maybe the one that was, well, a little bit more harsh for the Renault boys. But at the end of the day, the fact that one weekend across the whole season went bad for them, for a midfield team, and considering how close that midfield was this year, you got to take your hats off. You really have to take your hats off for Renault. And next year, again, they're going to make another step up. And they'll be losing their partnership with Red Bull. Now, for the top 3 teams, I'm going to do this little sort of season rundown a little bit differently. So we know Red Bull got 3rd. Max Verstappen somehow ended up 4th. And Daniel Ricciardo, well, he ended up 6th. And of the front runners, I'm going to be breaking this sort of review down into driver by driver. So, we've been going team by team, and we will still do that, but we'll still be going driver by driver from now on. So, Daniel Ricciardo's season, blimey, a painful one to talk about, isn't it? A really painful one to talk about. I mean, you think of the highs at the beginning of the year. Those mega, mega highs he was able to achieve. Okay, the first race of the season, 4th place, almost on the podium, but he got a penalty in practice. That is not the way you want to start the season. Was able to pick up that mega win in China, that mega win in Monaco, but also got 2 retirements in the first 6 races. 1 in Bahrain and 1 in Azerbaijan. And again, the Azerbaijan one, I, at the time, said this. I do put more of the blame at Verstappen's door, but obviously Ricciardo was still involved with that. Bahrain, that was a mechanical issue, and like I say, 2 wins, 2 DNFs, a 4th and a 5th. You're thinking, okay, that's a solid start to the year. I think he was 3rd in the championship, but was an outside, sort of, not a favourite, but an outside chance for the title. And, in the first 6 races, all of the 3 big teams had got 2 wins apiece. Vettel had 2, Hamilton had 2, and Ricciardo had 2. And you're thinking, well, if the season starts to blend itself in the right way, Ricciardo could be in with a chance. Well, how wrong we all were after Monaco. Ricciardo didn't step on the podium again. Not once was able to step up on the podium again. Managed to get 4th place 6 times, but also was able to pick up 6 more DNFs. That is crazy. 8 DNFs in 21 races. How is that even possible? How does someone get 8 DNFs in 21 races in the 3rd best car on the grid, which arguably come the end of the year, you could say was maybe the best car on the grid? So how does that even happen? And for a guy that, like I say, at the beginning of the year, his form was mega. Absolutely mega was Daniel Ricciardo's performances at the beginning of the year. And for such a nice guy, no one wishes it to happen to anyone, but no one wishes it to happen to Daniel Ricciardo. So, for him, I can see why he's moving on next year. I really can. The race he had in Monaco, again, that was a race where his car broke down. And I say this all the time as well. His 8 DNFs, don't even count the issues he had in qualifying. In Japan, for example, his car broke down in qualifying. He starts from the back. And that doesn't go down as a DNF. So this guy was plagued all season long with issues. And like I say, the fact that he's moving on, it just makes sense. There's too much pain there. And he's been patient for quite some time now. And as we've seen, an award I don't do later on is Overtake of the Season. But many of his moves this season have been mega once again. And even though he was out-qualified by this man, Max Verstappen, he'll be annoyed that Max Verstappen is arguably, I suppose, overtaking him now in the pecking order at Red Bull come the end of the season. And now, obviously, he's moved on. Max will be the team leader. Obviously, next season, and we'll talk about that whenever I do my predictions for 2019, which won't be too soon, in fact. But next year, when they do move to Honda engines, Max Verstappen will be the team leader. And the image you just saw on screen there, is that going to be an issue? And it was an issue this year, and I don't want to call it immaturity, because I think that's unfair for Max. I do think it's unfair for Max. You see some of his drives this year have been absolutely stellar. And there's always that stat that in the first 6 races, he made mistakes. Australia, he had his little spin. Bahrain, he made contact with Hamilton. China with Vettel. Azerbaijan with his teammate. Spain, he was able to pick up a podium, but made contact with Lance Stroll under the virtual safety car. Monaco, he binned it during practice. And then Canada was his first, weekend without any issues. He was able to get a podium with 3rd place. France 2nd, and got his first win of the season in Austria, which was a pretty mega drive. Probably one of the drives of the season, if I'm being totally honest. I was really impressed with Max that weekend, and he had a 15th place in Silverstone, a difficult weekend there. He also had a retirement in Hungary, but apart from those two, was able to finish in the top 5 every single race from there on out, and was able to get on the podium multiple times, a third in Spa, which was a brilliant result for Max. He was thoroughly chuffed with that one, as so were many of the Dutch fans that had seen him struggle there so often in his career. Was got a second place in Singapore. That was a really strong result. Was able to fight in front of Sebastian Vettel, a third in Japan, second in the USA, and then got his second win of the season in Mexico. Another demanding victory from Max Verstappen, second place in Brazil and third place in Abu Dhabi. And I believe the stat is that he was the guy that picked up the second most amount of points in the second half of the season. Got the same amount of victories as Sebastian Vettel in the second half of the season, and the same as Kimi Raikkonen. We'll talk about Kimi in a bit, but a really strong end from Max Verstappen. And I know at the beginning of the year, so many people were saying that this guy, he's not ready to be world champion. I was probably one of those people, but you've heard me say this for quite a while. He has improved so much as this season has gone on. He's definitely one of the best drivers on the grid. And I think with Alonso retiring, I would put Max in the top 2 drivers on the grid now. I really think he's that special. And if Charles Leclerc can have a good season next year, maybe he could push him out. But after this year, Max Verstappen, the Flying Dutchman, if he has a good car behind him, he is definitely going to be world champion one day. He really is. Right, let's move on then to, I think the team that had the best car this year for the majority of the season. I really do believe that, and that's Ferrari. So, second in the Constructors, second for Sebastian Vettel in the Championship, and third for Kimi Raikkonen, which, again, seems a little bit strange to say that. And I know Max Verstappen was 2 points behind him, so even in thinking that Max Verstappen got fourth, that's crazy. But anyway, Raikkonen third. He had a pretty mega year, did Kimi Raikkonen. Was on the podium more times than Sebastian Vettel this year, which was brilliant to see. He was also now, as of right now, the last Ferrari driver to get a pole position, the last Ferrari driver to get a win, the last Ferrari driver to stand on the podium, although it was with Sebastian Vettel, also the last Ferrari world champion, and the last man to win a Constructors' Champion with Ferrari, and he's leaving at the end of the year, so most of that most likely will change at some point or another. But this is by far the best year Raikkonen's had at Ferrari since his return. I don't want to say his best year of all time. Obviously, he did pick up his championship win in 2007. But I think apart from that, this probably was one of the best years he's ever had at Ferrari. He looked like such a completely different character. Whether that was because the pressure was off and he felt, well, I'm leaving at the end of the year anyway. Screw you, Sebastian. I'm going to just drive my heart out. You know, almost got that win at Monza. That would have been mega. Got the podium at Monza in the end with a P2. But also got the pole position, which was crazy to think of. And really put a sad face on Sebastian Vettel that particular weekend. But Raikkonen, like I said, the fact he finished third was down to his consistency. Was able to get over the 100 podium mark this year, which is a beautiful thing to see. You know, I think a lot of us have a soft spot for Kimi Raikkonen, but there's not really a lot to say from Kimi, to be totally honest with you. His best year at Ferrari, Mr. Consistent. Him and Hülkenberg were definitely the two most consistent drivers this year, and I don't think I expected him to be third. You know, I look at my predictions at the beginning of the year, and I don't even think I put him in the top 5. I didn't think the Ferrari would be the best car on the grid, and I definitely think that's helped him a lot. I really do. Partnered with, well, Red Bull being the third best car for the majority of the season, and Valtteri Bottas's, I suppose, misfortune at the beginning of the year, but then sort of lack of pace in the second half of the year. All of those sort of added together, and somehow, like in 2007, Kimi was just able to just rise to the top through his consistency. What more can you say? In love with the guy. I'm a little bit upset, especially at the end of the year with that retirement in Abu Dhabi, to see his last ever race with Ferrari to end in a retirement. But in a way, he didn't care. He didn't care that much. And I think next year he's going to really relish the chance to get in that scrap within the midfield. You know, at the front, for the majority of races, these guys, someone will be leading, then someone will be 5 seconds behind, then 2 seconds. There's just gaps, you know, they're following. Whereas that midfield, you do have a real strategy at play with having no idea who's going to be better than the rest, who's going to be outside the points, inside the points. I think Kimi's really going to relish that challenge, and I've just seen the picture on the screen. Sebastian Vettel's season, 2nd overall. Okay, that's all right. That's okay, isn't it? That's fine. Surely that's all right. 2nd, you know, good title challenge. That's fine, isn't it? Well, no, it's not fine. And well, the main reason is that it wasn't quite, but was almost 100 points behind Lewis Hamilton. And the biggest reason, was what you saw on screen a second ago. The spins, the incidents, the mistakes, all the way through the season, cost him. It really did. And considering he won the first 2 races of the year, one in Canada, one at Silverstone, that was a big blow to Lewis Hamilton. He'd had a few mistakes leading up to that part of the season. You know, the biggest one up to, I suppose, Silverstone was probably the incident in France where he clattered into the back of Valtteri Bottas on the opening lap. But apart from that, just had a little bit of contact with Max Verstappen in China, but he ran pretty solidly. He had a pretty, I suppose, non-descriptive race in Azerbaijan, in Spain, 4th places there. Got a 5th place, I suppose, a pretty incredible comeback, come to think of it, in France. But like I say, at that point of the season, the Ferrari was the best car. Okay, maybe in Australia you could say the Mercedes was the best car. And at this point of the season as well, Raikkonen was the better qualifier of the two. But after Silverstone came Germany. Oh, Germany. You seem so long ago. You seem so long ago, and yet it was probably the most pivotal point of the season. Leading his home Grand Prix, Sebastian Vettel in charge. Lewis Hamilton had made a mistake in qualifying. It all looked so rosy for Sebastian. He was going to take a big lead of the championship going into Hungary. And I think at that point as well, if the result had swung his way, he would have been guaranteed to be leading the championship going into the summer. But then he smacked it into the wall. He lost it in the stadium section, smack into the wall, and game over. And I think what made it so painful for the viewers, for Ferrari and for Sebastian, which, I mean, this event made him lose his head for the rest of the season, but what was so painful was that it was his own mistake. Nothing to blame it on. Yes, it was a little bit wet, but drivers like Sergei Sorokin, Brendan Hartley, drivers people consider to be inferior to Sebastian Vettel, in worse machinery, they were staying on the track. And I think that's what made the whole dynamic of the season shift. And yes, Sebastian got that win in Belgium straight after the summer break. But Ferrari, again, they had the best car in Spa. He didn't get pole position, but because that car was so good in the straights this year, it dominated in Belgium. But for the rest of the year, he didn't pick up a single win. Lewis Hamilton picked up 6. And that was where the season really shifted. And Mercedes will move on to now. First in the Constructors, Hamilton getting that record for the most points. But as we start off with Mercedes, we first talk about Valtteri Bottas. Again, I feel I found myself saying this about quite a few drivers this year. But what a strange season. And again, another driver that had a tale of two halves. You know, let's look at the results of the first half of the season. Crashed in qualifying in Australia. Got caught out by the virtual safety car. Finished 8th. Okay, you know, you can say, oh, that's a difficult start to the season, but you can write that off a little bit. It was a bit of a crazy weekend. Bahrain could have got the win if he'd have done a dive bomb last lap, but he said, you know what, I'll save it for the rest of the year. Now, there's still a lot of debate whether he should have gone for that move. I am still in that camp that he shouldn't have gone for it, but it's definitely one that's up for debate, and I can take the fact when people say he should have gone for it. It's neither here nor there for me, that particular one. Then in China was on the perfect strategy, and if there wasn't a late safety car, he'd have won that race. Azerbaijan, he was leading that race until he had a puncture late on due to debris. Spain, he got second, but he was comfortably behind Hamilton that race. Monaco as well has always been a difficult track for Mercedes the past couple of years, so he never really expected anything crazy to happen there. Canada was able to get a strong second place, and in France was, despite qualifying very high up, and I think he was second place into the first corner, he was taken out by Sebastian Vettel in the very first corner. Austria, pole position for Valtteri Bottas, ended up retiring due to mechanical issues. Silverstone was leading at the end of the race, but then was on, another late safety car, screwed him once again, and ended up dropping back down to fourth. Germany was in the fight for the win with Lewis Hamilton until Mercedes gave the team order, and he wasn't able to fight there. And I think after Germany, after Hungary, where he had a pretty awful race in Hungary, made contact a few times during that race, a very scrappy race from him, hadn't won at any point of the season up till then, despite having, like I say, multiple chances to win a race, and you're starting to think to yourself, hang on a second, is this guy ever going to win this season? But going into that summer break, despite Hungary, I think people were impressed with Valtteri Bottas. And I think that probably, keyboard warriors, there you go, there's a little bit of fuel to the fire for today. If it hasn't been controversial enough yet, there you go. But I think people were actually quite content with Valtteri at this point. Multiple chances to win races, fighting with Lewis Hamilton. Yes, he hadn't got that race win, but he was still thereabouts in the championship. I think he was third going into that summer break. And there was still a chance that he was the outside hope for the title. You expect Hamilton and Vettel to be there, but if he'd have pushed on, but he didn't. He had a god-awful end to the season, and finishing fifth, didn't get a win, only got 2 second places after that summer break, was demolished by his teammate, Lewis Hamilton. Valtteri, one of the underperformers of this season, for sure. I know I'm moving on to Hamilton now, but I was really disappointed in the end from Valtteri Bottas, a guy defended so often, but his teammate, my God, this guy keeps on proving why he is a legend in Formula One. He keeps on doing it somehow. Every year, we think to ourselves, this could be the year he doesn't do it. He had that 1 year against Rosberg where Rosberg finally came out on top. That was one season. And this year, yes, at the beginning of the year, had a shaky start. His first 4 races, even Azerbaijan, where he picked up his first race win of the year, it was a shaky start. But somehow, he was still able to win in Azerbaijan. He was still somehow able to do that. And ever since then, I can't think of a single mistake. And ever since China, he won every single race except Monaco, Canada, Austria, Silverstone, Belgium, Mexico and USA, and was only across the whole season not on the podium in China, Canada, Austria and Mexico. 4 times out of 21 races he wasn't on the podium. That is utter madness. Utter madness. 408 points, the most points of anyone in a season. 408. That is that's not even F1 career mode levels of overpowered. This guy this year, like I say, I think Ferrari had the best car. I do believe that. Not every single race. I think they were very close to Mercedes, but I still think they had that edge. But somehow, this guy finds another level. And we saw that at Silverstone in qualifying, a track we knew Ferrari had the best car there, still was able to get pole position. Hungary, a track we know Mercedes shouldn't be winning at, and was still able to get pole position and win there. Germany, from 14th on the grid, came through to win. Somehow, he's always able to find these extra limits that no one else is able to. I've never been the biggest fan of Sebastian Vettel, so I don't want to be too biased. And I don't think it's that biased, because I think this year Sebastian Vettel's shown his true colours a little bit. And next year, I think it's going to be the bigger challenge for Lewis Hamilton. I really do. He's got an unknown quantity in the form of Charles Leclerc. I'd like to think Vettel can only get better. And I think Bottas, who is going to be under a lot of pressure, he's going to have something to prove. And that's going to be really interesting to see if he rises to the challenge. But Lewis Hamilton, I've done it for so long. I don't want to say I've underestimated him, but another year I didn't think he'd win the championship this year. And he's proved why he's a 5-time world champion. He really has been that good this season. And as we just jump over the hour mark, it's over. That is 2018 written off, ladies and gentlemen. That is your year. That is your rundown of each team. And it's been a lot of fun talking about 2018. But before we leave it there, before we really start to jump into 2019, I've got some awards to give out. Something that I definitely didn't plan on doing. And I'm sure you guys know as well, I've done some stuff with the F1 Words, Sean, and he's done some stuff with Planet F1 over there, and I helped him with some of that, doing awards over on his channel. So if you're interested in seeing some more long-form awards, you can do. But for the last 5 minutes of this recap of 2018, I thought I'd do some interesting, a little bit more out there and rogue awards, just for a little bit of fun as we round off and say goodbye to Formula 1 2018. So I've already thrown out some stats during this little, I always call them podcasts, but I suppose it's a video slash podcast slash whatever you really want it to be. But I always like to throw out some stats. And we know we've had every single driver stay within their team. We know we had the first time everyone scored points. But our first award, the first category we'll be discussing today before we leave 2018 is the best livery. There was a lot of nice liveries this year. There was a lot of nice liveries. But our honourable mentions are Ferrari. I really love Ferrari's livery this year. Really thought it was very nice going from the majority red. McLaren, honourable mention. Probably a lot of you thought I'd give this to McLaren. Nice shade of papaya orange. Renault. Renault is also an honourable mention. A brilliant looking livery, but it doesn't quite get that first spot. My winner is Alfa Sauber. That burgundy, very naughty livery. The white, the bits of blue, I think it's very naughty indeed. So my best livery goes to Alfa Sauber. The best helmet design then of 2018, a difficult one. There was a lot of good ones, but I've narrowed it down. My honourable mentions, Daniel Ricciardo and the Honey Badger. Sebastian Vettel with his retro sort of helmet. Lewis Hamilton's, all of his 2018 helmets. But my number one helmet for 2018 goes to Valtteri Bottas. The fan helmet, the white and the blue. Cracking helmet, that one. Really like that. That's a pretty special helmet there from Valtteri Bottas. Now, the best crash of the year. There's been a lot of crashes in 2018. I'm looking for the biggest, most dramatic crash. Our nominees. Romain Grosjean at Silverstone. Pretty good crash with Carlos Sainz. Romain Grosjean with Marcus Ericsson in Azerbaijan. Romain Grosjean again in Abu Dhabi with Hulkenberg. Okay, didn't expect to see him on there. All right. Oh, Romain Grosjean again in Spain. Wow, okay. It might as well be called the Romain Grosjean Award, but he's not the winner. What is the best crash of 2018? I can't believe Romain Grosjean was so many times. Has he got any more crashes? I mean, we know that Spain one was pretty mad. But funnily enough, he doesn't win. The winner is Fernando Alonso in Spa. Crazy crash. Loved that one. Everyone was fine as well, so that always helps. But that was a crazy crash, that one. That got a lot of people a little bit shocked. So, Rookie of the Year. A little bit more serious, this one. Not many nominees, and I think you know who I'm going to give it to. But we've got the Kiwi Brendan Hartley. We've got the Russian Sergei Sorokin. We've got Pierre Gasly. A strong season from Gasly, but is there really any point debating this one? It's Charles Leclerc. Let's be honest, it's Charles Leclerc. Well, that was a silly reward. We don't want that. Right, best race. I like this one. This is a good one. You know, we had some mega races this year. And this next award and my final award were taken from my race ratings after each race this year in my race reviews. So, best race then. Monza. Lovely race in Monza. Very strong candidate. Mexico. Max Verstappen, second win. A brilliant race. Azerbaijan. He doesn't look too happy there, Valtteri, but it was a cracking race. Bahrain, Kimi Raikkonen, he didn't have the best race, but another cracking race. Silverstone, brilliant weekend altogether, that one. China. Germany, again. I'm not picking the most friendly pictures, am I, Germany? But none of these races pick up the award. The winner goes to the USA. What a weekend this was. Not only did we have a championship fight, Kimi Raikkonen won the race. Kimi Raikkonen won the race. Drama all throughout, and the one thing I want from a Formula 1 race, tension. And that's exactly what I got from the USA. So well done for that. And the final award, the Driver of the Year, it's a difficult one. It is. There's plenty of mentions. Hülkenberg, Alonso, Verstappen, even Charles Leclerc I would put very close. But for me, like I say, I can't say it enough this year. I really am fanboying out right now. He has been that good, Lewis Hamilton, this year. He has been that good. The stats speak for themselves at the end of the day. I've ran through it so much in this video. But he is my Driver of the Year, which I suppose winning the title, you can't disagree with me. That's the whole point, is finding out who's the best driver. But I really think, looking at the other people I mentioned there, Alonso, he's really dragged that car. A car that should be nowhere. He finished 11th. Leclerc, a team that got 2 points positions last year. This guy was best of the rest at the end of the season. Has got to move to Ferrari. And Verstappen, he is now one of the best on the grid. But what a year 2018 has been. And I think it will partly be remembered, but partly not. I think this year, on the surface, looks like another Mercedes domination, but I think deep down has been a really good year of Formula 1. My first year of covering Formula 1, it's been an absolute blast. So thank you guys, and I know it's 2018 already, and I know I should have done this sooner, but there was so much going on in my life, and just the fatigue of Formula 1 was a little bit crazy, but I can already start to feel the 2019 hype already starting up a little bit. I'll be doing my predictions very soon. Tomorrow night, you can join me with Chamber F1. So on Chamber F1's channel, he will be live streaming. I'll be there. The F1 Word will be there. John T's Corner will be there. And we'll be doing some early predictions for 2019. Like I said, I'll be doing my own separate predictions maybe next week. And of course, it's Formula E next week as well, so you've got all of that to look out for. I've also got exams once again. That's a lot of fun. So my schedule will still be a little bit all over the place for now, but that has been your end of year review. If you have enjoyed, please do drop a like, because I have tried to put in a lot of effort into this one. Just sitting down and talking to you guys just about the end of year. And like I say, hopefully your 2019 is going all right so far. I know we're not that far in, and I hope to see you in the next one.